name is Mila. I'm part of the IWSC marketing team, and we are very excited to be heading to Margaret River again this year. And we are also really excited about the fact that this year we will be focusing on wines from all regions of Western Australia, not just Margaret River. And we will be bringing to Australia a team of international wine judges overseen by Alex Hunt, Master of Wine, who's with us today, ready to answer any questions you may have about our judging process. So I will just pass the microphone to Alex now. And would you like to start with your expectations and the IWSC judging process, Alex?
All right, sure. Thanks, Mila. And look, thanks everyone for joining. I'm extremely excited about coming to Margaret River for this year's judging. I've tried some of the results from last year, and some very, very exciting wines were selected. So the fact that now this is being broadened to the whole of WA, I think is brilliant. It should be a really diverse selection of wines and an opportunity to bring wines both better known and lesser known onto the world stage. It's a region that personally I'm very fond of. I've been 6 times already, so always ready to come back and learn something new about the region and hopefully contribute a little bit of our perspective coming from the UK to judge as well. We'll be heading down in June, as you know, and judging for most of the week, the first week of June, so from the 4th to the 7th. And unlike some shows, release results to producers pretty much immediately, and the public after the weekend, when presumably the team will have spent a merry couple of days, Saturday and Sunday, compiling everything and getting it ready. So it's actually a very rapid process. We're not looking to draw out the process to an inordinate extent, but rather to come up with extremely valid, accurate and reasonable judgments and results in situ at the time. So just to give a little bit of a summary of how the judging process works and what we'll be looking for. We are, as I said, going to head down as a team, and this is a blind tasting done in a panel format. So very familiar to anyone who's judged a show before, I'm sure. It will be a flighted scenario of wines being brought round pre-poured in glasses, so there is no risk of any bottles being revealed or any colourful screw cap collars giving the game away. I think that's particularly important. But a more surprising omission compared to some of the similar shows out there is that price is not mentioned to the judges. I think this is really interesting because although it could be argued that it can be a guide to help people calibrate their expectations, at the same time that rather presupposes that the most expensive wines are the best and the cheapest are the least good. We would rather that our judges find out for themselves what the wine is like and what it's going to tell them, and then figure out on the basis purely of its quality what consumers might be expected to pay for it on that basis. So we have to, I would say, concentrate just that little bit harder when we're judging than the teams at equivalent shows that I've been participating with in the past. And my role in all of this is to oversee the team. It's not to taste every wine, but it's to bring a fresh perspective and a sense of calibration to what they do. So I'm not there to impose my view on every single wine and tell the team what they should think, but more to guide the overall thought process and make sure it's consistent both internally and settle disputes within the team of judges if there is disagreement, and also to ensure that it's consistent with the overall goals of the IWSC in our particular judging criteria. Any gold medals I will certainly be retasting, and I'll aim to do as many silvers as possible just to make sure that the standards are being applied correctly. And yes, certainly anything that's contentious I will be picking up and having an open discussion with the panel on to make sure that we feel that we've reached the fairest and most representative set of results we possibly can. Another thing that I think sets the IWSC apart is that feedback is given on all wines, whether or not a medal is awarded. This is quite unusual in my experience. Normally, non-medaled wines are rather left behind, and producers left scratching their heads as to why they didn't win a gold. We aim to, at least, even if it's uncomfortable for people, to give some kind of rationale as to how we find the wines, so people at least don't leave completely oblivious as to why the result may have not gone the way they wanted it to. So it's really the whole character of the process is to attempt to be as fair and as rigorous as possible. And that's why we've got always an expert selection of judges. The days in London that I've chaired in the past have always had a notably high caliber, with a lot of MWs, MSs, buyers, sommeliers, people with real influence in the industry, not just people who enjoy wine and want to spend a day tasting it. And that's obviously particularly true when it comes to an international mission like this to come and taste in the region. We know that doing this brings out a particularly high caliber, as well as a higher number of entries, and we want to make sure that we're ready for them. And so it's a really, really good panel that's been assembled, some of whom I know personally and can vouch for their skills. Just in terms of the medal grading and what this looks like, it's a familiar system. It's gold, silver, bronze. So again, everyone knows what that means more or less. But I just wanted to talk through the IWSC definitions of those and talk a little bit about that, so that where we choose to set those boundaries is clear to everyone. Gold is defined as an excellent wine with great personality, an example that stands out among its peers. Silver, an accomplished wine with considerable personality, character, and complexity, a classic example of its style or variety. And bronze is a perfectly well-made wine which provides an enjoyable drinking experience. So I think the key word for me, certainly in those definitions, is personality. A wine that is just well made, technically flawless, and even made from perfectly healthy fruit, whatever you might like to say, is not necessarily going to do incredibly well, because it needs to be more evocative than that. It needs to have some kind of identity and individuality. Now, in great regions like many parts of WA, this should be easy to achieve because the terroir has its own personality that will be transmitted through the fruit. So I don't think it's a huge stumbling block to put in your way. Some other regions, and certainly regions that are less premium, may struggle a bit more on that score. But nonetheless, this is certainly what I'm going to be looking for. And it could be either, as the silver definition officially says, a classic example of a well-defined and recognized style. But I think, given that we're talking about a broader range of regions in this particular session, that may not yet have a totally well-defined style, or maybe from a variety that's unusual within the given region, there's going to be latitude on that. And I think it's possible in any region, I mean, God, even in Bordeaux, for example, just occasionally to do something exceptional that is atypical. There will certainly not be penalties awarded for being atypical, provided the wine has a really delicious and individual identity of its own. So that's really where the bar is set. We're looking for wines that inspire and delight, that are delicious and characterful, and ideally tell some kind of story of where they're from. So Mila, is there anything I've left out at this point? Anything that you'd like me to go on to?
I think this is brilliant, a really comprehensive, detailed description of our judging process. Thank you so much, Alex. Maybe just one small thing that I would add, that we are one of the few competitions that actually limit the number of samples tasted per day to 65, maximum of 65. Very often it's less than that. And this really allows enough time for each wine to be kind of studied under the microscope and discussed properly by the panel. And I think this element of discussion is very important, a very important part of the IWSC judging.
Yeah, I totally agree. And not only that, but also as someone who has judged at other shows with a much higher limit or sometimes no limit, the avoidance of palate fatigue, I think, is also absolutely essential. It's a really horrible experience, I find, as a judge, to get past wine number 80, let's say, and feel that you're doing a terrible job because you're trying to second guess what the wine would taste like if your mouth hadn't been completely destroyed by the 79 wines that you've tasted previously. And I have to say that moving to IWSC and being part of the team agreeing this cap, I mean, I really advocated for it because otherwise a wine that comes at the end of the day may be judged completely unfairly, either positively if it's just if it's something so gentle it comes across as a respite after, let's say, a day of heavy red wines, or unfairly if it has a tannic profile for aging, but you're already so puckered you can't deal with it anymore. So I think that cap is incredibly important. And that said, I think palate fatigue is certainly something, given the prevailing tendency now towards slightly less extracted wines, the danger has softened. But nonetheless, I think that's a huge advantage and makes judging IWSC both mentally and physically more satisfying, and I think it improves the results as well. Should we mention also a little bit about the experience on the trip?
Yes,
because
I was just going to say that.
Okay,
yes,
great.
Please.
Because I think that this is another very important thing, that wine, after all, is not just an agricultural artifact, but a cultural one as well. And the opportunity for this to be a cultural exchange rather than just a group of people flying in from another continent, passing judgment and then disappearing, I think is a very important distinction. That's not really our aim. We want to bring our perspective, our expertise, and our ideas, of course, and intersect them with what you produce. But at the same time, we want to experience the region and to take the opportunity while there. After all, we all know how far it is there from pretty much anywhere, and how magical it is to experience the region, its landscape, its produce, to learn from you, to understand your perspectives as well. So to make it as much of a cultural interchange as possible.
Definitely, that's a great point. It's actually the beauty of our global judging, that it's a totally different way to experience the region and the wines and to understand them better. And our judges are really kind of turned into real ambassadors of this particular region where they go. So while all of you are thinking about your questions, maybe I add a couple of words about the results promotion and what we're going to do about promoting our winners at the IWSC. So the results will be publicly announced on our website and on our social media on 10th of June. Our Margaret River and Western Australian winners will have a dedicated feature on our consumer magazine, Club Enologique. Also, we have a podcast. It's called The Drinking Hour. David Kermode, who is also one of the judges heading to Margaret River, so he hosts this podcast and he will do a dedicated episode. What else? Oh, The Buyer, which is one of the UK's leading trade magazines, will also feature our winners, and will have a dedicated article about our global judging in Margaret River. And we are planning to also organize, very important part of it, to organize a trade and press tasting in London, in the UK, showcasing our Western Australian winners as well, our winning wines. We did something like this last year as well, and it was just a huge success. The amount of attention we got, the amount of visitors we got was just insane. So hopefully it will be a huge success this year as well.
There's one thing that Amanda reminds me in the chat here, which is to mention trophies. And she's right, trophies are handled slightly differently in IWSC versus some other shows. the way it works is that in September, normally, excuse me, all of the gold medals from every judging session around the world and every potential wine style around the world are brought together for the trophy judging, where the wine judging committee and a few select elite judges are brought together to determine that final stage. What's unusual about it is that there is actually no cap on the number of trophies. They represent the best of the best, and it's quite possible to get a tie, for example. So you can, although the wines are flighted and tasted with their peers as much as possible, in some cases the number of golds from a particular obscure region might also be low, and so it really is a question of pitting the best against the best from around the world, and any number of wines can get through. So it's really worth aiming for. It's not a winner takes all scenario.
Yes, thank you, Alex, and thanks, Amanda, for reminding about this. And also, it's worth mentioning our producer trophies as well, which is also an important part of the IWSC judging. So each year we award producer trophies to the best of the best, really, around the world. These are like highly prestigious accolades. And we award them in different categories, such as red wine producer, white wine producer, sparkling wine producer, sweet and fortified wine producer. And then so the best producers get shortlisted for these trophies. The shortlisted producers get a huge amount of coverage across our channels. So it's very prestigious to just get shortlisted, not to mention to actually win the trophy itself. And the winner will be announced at our annual awards celebration here in London on 12th of November. It's a very big trade event, which also receives a huge amount of international attention, international press. It's known as the Oscars of the drinks industry, really. So, and in fact, yeah, last year we had a few Australian winners. We had Cherubino winning our white wine producer trophy in 2023. They also won our outstanding producer trophy as well. And we also have our sustainability awards, and whoever enters our main judging can enter the sustainability awards for free. And this is our green wine initiative and old wine trophy. And yeah, we had an Australian winner last year as well. So Cape Mentel won our old wine trophy, also receiving a huge amount of press, I think, in Australia and abroad as well. Any questions?
What are you most looking forward to, Alex?
Oh God, how do I choose, Amanda? Being there, exchanging ideas with what I know from my very first trip 20 years ago is a really interactive, lively, open and thoughtful group of producers, and then just getting to experience the best of what you have to offer. Updating my taste memory on the diversity. That's what I'd really hope to see is a diversity of entries and of styles, and the best that the beautiful region has to showcase.
Yeah, and we're really hoping that some of our neighbouring regions will really get behind it this year too, and we'll get some entries from our other West Australian regions. So hopefully we can show you some of those as well.
Yeah, I think that would be great, because after all, contrasting regions, especially neighbouring regions, set each other into relief. Through comparing, let's say, a given variety or a given soil type or whatever it might be, through the lenses of different regions, we get to understand both better. So the more that can be encouraged, I think the better it is for every region.